The scent of rain and pine needles filled the air as Iris Blackwood stood at the edge of the pack territory, watching the funeral procession wind its way through the forest. Luna Celeste's body had been wrapped in white silk, carried by 6 of the strongest wolves toward the sacred burial grounds where generations of pack leaders rested. The entire Shadow Moon pack had gathered to pay their respects, their howls echoing through the mountains like a symphony of grief. Iris kept her distance, as she always did. As the pack's head healer and daughter of the former beater, she held a position of respect but never prominence. She preferred the shadows, the quiet corners where she could observe without being observed. Today, however, her eyes were drawn to one figure above all others. Alpha Ronan Ashcroft walked behind his mate's body with mechanical precision, his broad shoulders rigid beneath his black ceremonial coat. His dark hair was longer than usual, unkempt in a way that spoke of sleepless nights and forgotten meals. Even from her position on the hillside, Iris could see the hollow look in his storm-grey eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly at his sides. She had loved him from afar for years, a secret she buried so deep that sometimes she forgot it existed. But watching him now, seeing the devastation written across his features, she felt her heart break for entirely different reasons. Celeste had been everything a Luna should be: Euros beautiful, confident, born to lead. Iris was none of those things. The ceremony concluded as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed too cheerful for such a somber occasion. The pack began to disperse, but Ronan remained at the graveside, motionless as a statue. One by one, the other wolves approached to offer condolences before retreating, leaving him alone with his grief. Iris found herself walking toward him before she realized what she was doing. Her feet moved of their own accord, drawn by an invisible thread she couldn't explain. She stopped a few feet away, uncertain whether to speak or simply wait for him to acknowledge her presence. "She's really gone," Ronan said, without turning around, his voice rough with unshed tears. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and this will all be a nightmare." "I'm sorry for your loss, Alpha," Iris replied softly. Luna Celeste was a remarkable woman. The pack loved her deeply. Ronan finally looked at her, and the raw pain in his eyes made her breath catch. "Everyone keeps saying that. How remarkable she was, how much she meant to the pack, but none of them understand what it's like to lose your other half, your destined mate. The bond, it's like having a limb torn away." Iris nodded, though she couldn't truly comprehend the depth of his loss. She had never experienced the mating bond, never felt that cosmic connection that bound 2 souls together for eternity. "The grieving process takes time. There's no rush to heal." "Time," he repeated with a bitter laugh. "The Council doesn't believe in time. They're already pushing for me to take a new Luna, to strengthen the pack's position, as if Celeste could be replaced like a broken chair." The mention of the Council sent a chill down Iris's spine. The governing body of the Werewolf Nation had been putting pressure on unmated alphas across the territories, concerned about pack stability and potential challenges from rival groups. A pack without a Luna was considered vulnerable, incomplete. "Surely they understand that you need to Morena Euros. They understand politics," Ronan interrupted, his voice gaining an edge. "They understand that the Crimson Ridge Pack has been testing our borders ever since Celeste died. They understand that without a Luna's influence, some of our own pack members are beginning to question my leadership. Iris felt a flutter of anger on his behalf. Your leadership has never been in question. You've protected this pack for 8 years, expanded our territory, negotiated peace treaties with 3 neighbouring packs. One tragedy doesn't erase all of that. Ronan studied her face with new interest, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. You're the healer, aren't you? Marcus Blackwood's daughter. Yes, Alpha. Iris Blackwood. Iris, he repeated, testing the name on his tongue. You were close to Celeste, weren't you? I remember seeing you at the clinic together. She came by when pack members were injured or sick. Luna Celeste always made sure everyone received proper care. Iris chose her words carefully, not wanting to reveal that most of their interactions had been professional rather than personal. Celeste had been kind but distant, focused on her duties as Luna rather than forming close friendships with individual pack members. She would have liked knowing you were here today. She always said the pack's healer was its most important member after the Alpha and Luna. Ronan's expression softened slightly. Thank you for coming. As Iris walked back to her cottage that evening, she couldn't shake the image of Ronan standing alone by the grave. The Alpha's residence sat on a hill, overlooking the main settlement, its windows dark, except for a single light in what she knew was his study. She wondered if he was sleeping at all, or if he spent his nights staring at photographs and reliving memories. 3 weeks later, everything changed. Iris was organising her herb supplies when a sharp knock interrupted her work. She opened the door to find Ronan on her doorstep, looking haggard and desperate. His usual composed demeanour had cracked, revealing the broken man beneath. I need your help, he said without preamble. May I come in? Iris stepped aside, gesturing him toward the small sitting area near the fireplace. Of course, Alpha. Is someone injured? Sick? In a manner of speaking. Ronan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture that had become habitual in recent weeks. The council is arriving tomorrow. They're coming to discuss my future as Alpha, and they won't leave without assurances that I'm taking steps to secure the pack's stability. What kind of assurances? A new mate. A new mate. Luna. The words came out like they physically pained him. I've tried explaining that I need more time, that the pack is stable under my leadership alone, but they won't listen. They're threatening to call for a leadership challenge if I don't comply. Iris felt her stomach drop. A leadership challenge meant other Alphas could petition to take over the Shadow Moon pack if they could prove Ronan was unfit to lead. It was a barbaric practice that hadn't been invoked in decades, but the council still held the authority to authorize it. Surely there must be some compromisio euros. There is. Ronan looked directly at her, his grey eyes intense and pleading. I need you to let me mark you. Temporarily. Just until the council pressure dies down, and I can figure out a more permanent solution. The request hit Iris like a physical blow. Marking was the process by which mates claimed each other, a sacred ritual that bound their souls together through the wolf spirits that dwelled within every werewolf. It wasn't something done lightly or temporarily. Alpha, I don't think you understand what you're asking. A marking creates a bond between wolves. It's not something that can be easily undone. I know exactly what I'm asking, Ronan said firmly. And I know it's not fair to you. But I'm desperate, Iris. If the council removes me from power, everything Celeste and I built together will be destroyed. The peace treaties, the territorial agreements, the alliances we forged Eurozet will all crumble. Iris stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the pack village. Below, she could see children playing in the square while their parents worked in gardens and workshops. These people depended on Ronan's leadership, had prospered under his guidance. But what he was proposing, there would have to be conditions, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I won't be a true mate to you. I won't share your bed or pretend to love you. I'll fulfill the basic duties of a Luna for the pack's sake, but that's all. Relief flooded Ronan's features. Of course, I would never ask more of you than you're willing to give. This would be a business arrangement, nothing more. You help me maintain my position, and I'll make sure you're well provided for. When enough time has passed and the council's attention turns elsewhere, we can discuss ending the arrangement. And what happens to me when you find your real mate? Because even if Celeste was your destined mate, wolves have been known to form new bonds after their mate's death. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. I don't think that will happen. What I had with Celeste was once in a lifetime. I'm not looking for love again, Iris. I just need stability and time to grieve properly. That night, Iris stared at the ceiling of her bedroom, weighing her options. She could refuse Ronan's request and maintain her quiet, uncomplicated life. She could continue working as the pack's healer, tending to wounds and illnesses while watching from the sidelines as someone else took Ronan's place and potentially destroyed everything good about their pack. Or she could say yes and step into a role she had never imagined for herself. She would become Luna of the Shadow Moon pack, but only as a placeholder, a temporary solution to a political problem. The thought should have been insulting, but instead it filled her with a strange sense of purpose. The next morning, she sent word to Ronan that she accepted his proposal. The marking ceremony took place that evening in the Alpha's residence, witnessed only by Ronan's beater, Cameron Red, and the pack's eldest member, Sarah Moonwhisper, who served as their spiritual guide. Iris wore a simple blue dress that had belonged to her mother, her dark hair braided with silver ribbons, according to tradition. Are you certain about this? Sarah asked Iris privately before the ceremony began. A forced marking can have unexpected consequences. The wolf spirits don't always respond well to unions born of necessity rather than love. I understand the risks, Iris replied, though she wasn't entirely sure she did. But this is what's best for the pack. The ceremony itself was surprisingly intimate despite its political origins. Ronan stood before her in traditional ceremonial robes, his dark hair pulled back to reveal the strong line of his jaw. When Sarah instructed them to join hands, Iris felt a spark of electricity pass between them that had nothing to do with the magical ritual about to take place. Do you, Ronan Ashcroft, Alpha of the Shadow Moon pack, take Iris Blackwood as your mate and Luna, to stand beside you in leadership and share in your burdens? Sarah's voice carried the weight of centuries of tradition. I do, Ronan said solemnly, his eyes fixed on Iris's face. Do you, Iris Blackwood, accept the bond of mating with Alpha Ronan and the responsibilities of Luna to the Shadow Moon pack? Iris's voice was steady despite the racing of her heart. I do. Then let the marking commence. Ronan stepped closer, close enough that Iris could smell his distinctive scent of cedar and rain. His hands came up to cup her face gently, and she saw something flicker in his grey, either surprise perhaps, or recognition. Thank you, he whispered, so quietly that only she could hear. For saving us all. Then he lowered his head to the junction of her neck and shoulder, where the mating mark would be placed. The moment his teeth grazed her skin, the world exploded into sensation. Iris had expected pain, the sharp bite that would leave a permanent scar identifying her as Ronan's mate. What she hadn't expected was the rush of images and emotions that flooded her mind the instant their connection was established. She saw flashes of Ronan's Memoriessa Euros, his childhood, his first transformation, the day he met Celeste, the agony of losing her. But underneath it all was something else, something that made no sense. A golden thread of light that seemed to connect her heart to his, pulsing with a warmth that had nothing to do with the marking ceremony and everything to do with something far more profound. When Ronan pulled back, his eyes were wide with shock. He stared at her as if she had suddenly sprouted wings, his hand unconsciously moving to his own chest, where Iris could somehow sense he was feeling the same inexplicable connection. "It's done," Sarah announced, but her voice sounded distant to Iris's ears. "You are now mated in the eyes of the pack and the spirits. May your union bring strength and prosperity to the Shadow Moon pack." Cameron stepped forward to offer his congratulations, but Iris barely heard him. All of her attention was focused on Ronan, who looked like he had just witnessed something impossible. The marking on her neck throbbed with a pleasant warmth, but it was the strange new awareness of Ronan's emotions that left her reeling. She could feel his confusion, his disbelief, and underneath it all, a growing sense of wonder that he was trying desperately to suppress. The council arrived the next morning as promised, a delegation of 5 elderly werewolves who exuded authority and barely concealed impatience. They gathered in the Alpha's formal receiving room, their sharp eyes taking in every detail of the pack's leadership arrangements. "Alpha Ashcroft," the lead councilman, Elder Thorne, began without preamble. "We trust you understand why we've come." "I do," Ronan replied calmly. "And I'm pleased to inform you that the pack's stability is no longer in question. Allow me to present my new Luna." Iris entered on cue, wearing the formal Luna regalia that had been hastily adjusted to fit her smaller frame. The silver circlet felt heavy on her head, but she kept her chin raised and her expression serene as she moved to stand beside Ronan's chair. "Luna Iris," Ronan continued, placing a possessive hand on her lower back, formerly Iris Blackwood, our pack's head healer. The marking ceremony was completed yesterday evening. Elder Thorne's eyebrows rose skeptically. "Rather sudden, wasn't it? Our intelligence suggested you were still deep in mourning for your first mate." "Grief has a way of putting life into perspective," Ronan replied smoothly. "I realized that the pack needed stability, and Iris has always been someone I trusted and respected. Our bond may have formed quickly, but it's no less genuine for its speed." Iris felt a flush of something. Through their new connection Euros was that admiration? Before she could analyze it further, Elder Thorne turned his attention to her. "And you, Luna Iris, are you prepared for the responsibilities that come with leading a pack of this size and importance?" "I've spent my entire life serving the Shadow Moon pack," Iris replied with quiet confidence. "I may be new to the role of Luna, but I'm not new to putting the pack's needs before my own. I look forward to supporting Alpha Ronan and ensuring our people continue to thrive." The other council members exchanged glances, and Iris could feel their surprise at her composed response. They had expected to find a rushed political mating that would give them grounds to question Ronan's judgment. Instead, they were faced with what appeared to be a functioning partnership. "Very well," Elder Thorne said after a long pause. "We will, of course, be monitoring the situation closely. The pack's performance and stability will be reviewed again in 6 months' time." "Of course," Ronan agreed. "You're welcome to visit whenever you deem necessary." After the council departed, Iris found herself alone with Ronan in his study. The tension that had sustained her through the meeting finally broke, and she sank into one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "That went better than expected," she said, pulling the heavy circlet from her head and setting it aside. "You were perfect," Ronan replied, and she could feel his genuine gratitude through their bond. "I couldn't have asked for a better performance." The word performance stung more than it should have. Iris reminded herself that this was exactly what she had signed up for a Eurozar role to play, a part to perform for the good of the pack. The strange connection she had felt during the marking ceremony was just her imagination, a side effect of the ritual that would fade with time. "About what happened during the ceremony," Ronan began hesitantly, then stopped himself. "Never mind. It's not important. What were you going to say? Just, did you feel anything unusual when I marked you? Any unexpected sensations or—" Iris studied his face carefully. "Why do you ask?" "No reason. The adrenaline of the moment can sometimes cause strange reactions. I wanted to make sure you weren't experiencing any adverse effects." She could feel his reluctance to discuss it further, sense his desire to dismiss whatever had passed between them as meaningless. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps it was better not to examine the golden thread of connection that seemed to pulse between them even now. "I feel fine," she lied. "Just tired. It's been an overwhelming few days." Relief flooded through their bond, though whether it was relief that she was okay or relief that she wasn't going to push the topic, Iris couldn't tell. The weeks that followed established a routine that was both comfortable and frustrating. Iris moved into the Luna's suite in the Alpha residence, a beautiful set of rooms that had clearly been designed with Celeste in mind. Everything was elegant and feminine, from the pale blue walls to the delicate silver fixtures. Iris felt like an imposter surrounded by another woman's belongings, but Ronan had insisted she take over the space completely. "Pack members need to see that you belong here," he had explained. "If you're staying in a guest room or keeping your old cottage, it sends the wrong message about the permanence of our bond." So Iris packed away her simple belongings and tried to make herself at home among silk curtains and imported furniture. She attended pack meetings as Luna, learned to navigate the complex politics of interpack relations, and slowly began to win over pack members who had initially been skeptical of their alpha's hasty remarriage. But it was the private moments that proved most challenging. Ronan was unfailingly polite and respectful, treating her like a valued business partner rather than a mate. They shared meals and discussed pack business, but there was always a careful distance between them, as if he was afraid that getting too close might somehow betray Celeste's memory. The bond they shared made this distance both easier and harder to maintain. Iris could feel Ronan's emotions as a constant background presence in her Minder Eurosa's dedication to the pack, his lingering grief, his determination to honour his arrangement with her. But she could also sense moments when his guard dropped, when he looked at her with something that might have been genuine affection before remembering himself and pulling back. For her part, Iris threw herself into her Luna duties with the same thoroughness she had once applied to healing. She organized pack events, mediated disputes between families, and worked to strengthen relationships with neighboring packs. The work was rewarding in a way that surprised her, and she found herself genuinely caring about the political and social challenges facing their people. It was during a visit from the neighboring Crescent Moon pack that everything began to unravel. Alpha Marcus Steele arrived with a delegation of 20 wolves, ostensibly to renew a hunting treaty that was set to expire at the end of the year. But Iris could sense the underlying tension in the air from the moment their convoy passed through the pack's borders. "There's something off about this," she told Ronan as they prepared for the formal welcoming ceremony. "Marcus has never brought such a large delegation for routine treaty negotiations." "I know," Ronan replied grimly. "Cameron's intelligence suggests they've been conducting their own negotiations with the Crimson Ridge Pack, if they're planning to form an alliance against us. They wouldn't dare challenge us directly. The Shadow Moon Pack is too strong. Not if they think our leadership is unstable. Not if they believe our new lunar bond is fake." The words hung in the air between them, like an accusation. Iris felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the implications. If other packs suspected that her mating with Ronan was purely political, it could be seen as a sign of weakness, an indication that the Alpha was so desperate for stability that he would enter into a false bond. "Then we need to convince them otherwise," Iris said firmly. "What would a genuinely mated pair do that we haven't been doing?" Ronan's expression was troubled. "Iris, I don't want to ask more of you, Thana, Euros. We agreed to do whatever was necessary for the pack's safety. If that means being more convincing as mates, then that's what we'll do." The welcoming feast that evening was a test of their ability to project unity and strength. Iris wore a stunning emerald dress that complemented her dark hair and pale skin, while Ronan was resplendent in his formal Alpha attire. They sat together at the head table, presenting a picture of marital harmony to their guests. But Alpha Marcus was not easily fooled. Throughout the evening, Iris caught him watching them with calculating eyes, looking for signs of discord or pretense. During the dancing portion of the evening, he made his move. "Luna, Iris," he said, approaching their table with a wolfish smile. "I wonder if you might honor me with a dance. It's been far too long since I had the pleasure of dancing with such a beautiful Luna." It was a direct challenge, one that Ronan couldn't refuse without appearing possessive or insecure. Iris rose gracefully and accepted Marcus's offered hand, feeling Ronan's tensions spike through their bond. Marcus was an accomplished dancer and an even more accomplished manipulator. As they moved across the floor, he kept up a steady stream of seemingly innocent conversation designed to probe for weaknesses. "You and Alpha Ronan seem very happy together," he said as he spun her gracefully. "It's remarkable how quickly you've adapted to the lunar role. Most wolves find the transition quite challenging." "I've had excellent guidance," Iris replied carefully. "And a very supportive mate." "Of course. Though, I must admit, I was surprised when I heard about your mating. The timing seemed rather convenient, given the Council's recent concerns about unmated alphas." "Love doesn't follow a schedule," Iris said, injecting just the right amount of warmth into her voice. "Sometimes the heart knows what it wants, despite our attempts to plan otherwise." "Indeed. And tell me, have you been experiencing any of the typical signs of a new mating bond? The enhanced emotional connection, The increased sensitivity to your mate's moods. I remember, when I was first mated to my dear Luna, we could barely stand to be apart for more than a few hours. It was a trap, and Iris knew it. Marcus was fishing for information about the depth of her bond with Ronan, trying to determine if their connection was genuine or fabricated. Unfortunately, the truth was complicated in ways she couldn't explain to anyone, including herself. Every mating bond is different, she said diplomatically. Ronan and I prefer to keep the more intimate details of our relationship private. Marcus's smile sharpened. How refreshingly modest, though I can't help but notice that you haven't been seen together outside of official pack business. No romantic walks. No shared hunts. No public displays of affection. One might almost think you were merely business partners rather than mates. Before Iris could respond, she felt a familiar presence behind her. Ronan's hand settled possessively on her waist as he smoothly cut in, displacing Marcus with practiced ease. "I believe this dance belongs to me," Ronan said, his voice carrying just enough alpha authority to make it clear that Marcus's line of questioning was unwelcome. As Marcus retreated with a knowing smirk, Ronan pulled Iris closer than he ever had before. She could feel the solid warmth of his chest against hers, smell the cedar and rain scent that had become familiar over the past months. When she looked up into his grey eyes, she saw a mixture of protectiveness and something else she couldn't quite identify. "What did he say to you?" Ronan asked in a low voice that only she could hear. "He was fishing for information about our bond, testing to see if we were really mated or just putting on an act for political reasons." "And what did you tell him?" "That we prefer to keep our private life private. But I don't think he was convinced." Ronan spun her expertly, and when she came back into his arms, he was closer than before. "Then, we need to be more convincing." "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, Ronan dipped his head until his lips were almost touching her ear. To anyone watching, it would look like a lover's whisper, an intimate moment between mates. But his words were purely strategic. "Marcus is watching us. We need to give him something to see that will prove our bond is real." Iris felt her heart race, though whether from fear or anticipation, she couldn't say. "What kind of something?" "Trust me," Ronan murmured, and then his lips were brushing against the mark on her neck, the spot where he had claimed her months ago. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The golden thread of connection that Iris had been trying to ignore blazed to life, sending waves of sensation through her entire body. She gasped, her hands tightening involuntarily on Ronan's shoulders as every nerve ending seemed to catch fire. Through their bond, she felt Ronan's shock at the intensity of her response, his own surprise at how right it felt to touch her this way. For a moment, neither of them moved, caught up in the unexpected rush of genuine emotion and desire. Then Ronan pulled back slightly, his eyes wide with something that looked almost like fear. "Iris, I know," she whispered, struggling to regain her composure. Around them, the other dancers continued their routines, but Iris felt as if the entire world had shifted on its axis. They finished the dance in silence, both lost in their own thoughts and the implications of what had just happened. When the music ended, Ronan escorted her back to their table with perfect courtesy, but Iris could feel his emotional turmoil through their bond, like a storm brewing on the horizon. Marcus approached them one final time before the evening ended, his expression speculative but less hostile than before. "Thank you for a lovely evening, Alpha Ronan. Luna Iris, I look forward to our treaty negotiations tomorrow. I have a feeling they'll be quite productive. After the guests had retired to their quarters, Iris found herself alone with Ronan, in his study. The tension between them was palpable, charged with questions neither seemed willing to ask. "We should discuss what happened tonight," Ronan said finally, pouring himself a glass of whiskey with hands that weren't quite steady. "What about it?" Iris asked, though she knew exactly what he meant. "The way you responded when I touched your mark. That wasn't acting, Iris. That was real." She felt heat flush her cheeks. "Maybe we're both better actors than we thought." "Don't." Ronan's voice was sharp. "Don't dismiss this. Something is happening between us. Something that shouldn't be possible." "What do you mean?" Ronan set down his glass and turned to face her fully. "Iris, I think we might be true mates." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Iris felt her world tilt as the implications hit her. "That's impossible," she whispered. "You were mated to Celeste. She was your destined mate. Everyone knows that." "I thought so too, but the connection I feel with you, the way our bond has been growing stronger instead of remaining static, it's not normal for a political mating. And tonight, when I touched you, it felt like coming home." Iris shook her head, backing away from him. "No, you're confused. You're still grieving, Celeste. And you're mistaking gratitude for something else. True mates are rare, Ronan. Most wolves only get one chance at that kind of connection in their lifetime. But not all." Ronan pressed. "There are documented cases of wolves finding second chances after their first mate dies. And the signs are all there, Iris. The enhanced bond, the emotional connection, the physical response. Stop. Stop." Iris held up a hand, her mind reeling. "Even if what you're saying is true, it doesn't change anything. I agreed to be your temporary Luna, nothing more. I won't be a replacement for Celeste, and I won't be the rebound mate who helped you move on from your great love. Iris, please, Listina, Euros. No, you listen." Her voice was stronger now, fed by months of suppressed emotions and newfound determination. "I spent my whole life being invisible, being the reliable one who never asks for anything in return. I won't be that for you too. If we are true mates, then you need to figure out what that means to you. But until you do, nothing changes between us." With that, she left the study and retreated to her own rooms, leaving Ronan alone with his whiskey and his revelations. The treaty negotiations the next day proceeded smoothly, with Marcus apparently satisfied that the Shadow Moon Pack's leadership was stable. But Iris could barely concentrate on the political discussions, her mind constantly returning to Ronan's words from the night before. True mates. The phrase echoed in her head like a mantra, both thrilling and terrifying in its implications. She had dreamed of finding her destined mate since childhood, but never in her wildest fantasies had she imagined it would be like Fisa Euros, complicated by grief and politics and the ghost of another woman's love. Over the following weeks, the tension between Iris and Ronan reached a breaking point. He tried repeatedly to discuss their potential true mate bond, while she deflected and avoided the topic with increasing desperation. The strain was affecting their ability to lead the pack, and both Cameron and Sarah had begun to notice the discord between their Alpha and Luna. "You can't keep running from this forever," Sarah told Iris during one of their private conversations. "The spirits don't make mistakes when it comes to true mate bonds. If you're feeling this connection, there's a reason for it. The timing is all wrong, Iris protested. Celeste has been dead for less than a year. How can Ronan possibly know what he's feeling when he's still mourning his first mate? Grief doesn't follow a timeline, Sarah replied gently. And love doesn't wait for convenient moments to appear. Sometimes the heart knows what it needs even when the mind rebels against it. But what if I'm just a substitute? What if he thinks he feels something for me because I'm safe and available and willing to help him through his grief? Is that what you really believe? Iris was quiet for a long moment, considering the question honestly. Through their bond, she could feel Ronan's emotions more clearly than ever. His guilt over potentially betraying Celeste's memory, his confusion about his growing feelings, his fierce protectiveness toward Iris herself. But underneath it all was something warm and golden, and undeniably Reala-Eurozar connection that seemed to grow stronger every day, regardless of their attempts to ignore it. I don't know what to believe anymore, she admitted. But I know I can't be his consolation prize. If he chooses me, it has to be because he wants me, not because I'm convenient. The crisis came, as crises often do, from an unexpected direction. Iris was returning from a visit to the Pack's outer settlements when she encountered a group of rogue wolves on the mountain road. There were 5 of them, lean and dangerous-looking creatures who bore the distinctive scars of wolves who had been cast out of their original packs for various crimes. Well, well, the leader said, as they surrounded her car, forcing her to stop. What do we have here? The famous Lunar Iris, all alone and far from home. Iris kept her expression calm, despite the fear coursing through her veins. You're trespassing on Shadow Moon Pack territory. I suggest you leave before my mate arrives to collect me. The rogue laughed, revealing teeth that were filed to sharp points in the fashion of the most violent outcasts. Oh, we're counting on Alpha Ronan coming to find you. In fact, we sent him a very specific invitation. You see, Luna, you're going to help us send a message about the price of weakness. Before Iris could react, 2 of the rogues had grabbed her arms and were dragging her from the car. She fought back with every technique her father had taught her, but she was outnumbered and outmatched. Within minutes, she was bound and being carried deeper into the forest, away from the main road where anyone might find her. Miles away, Ronan felt the exact moment Iris's fear spiked through their bond. He was in the middle of a meeting with his senior pack members when the sensation hit him like a physical blow, driving him to his feet with a snarl that made everyone in the room freeze. Alpha? Cameron asked, instantly alert. What's wrong? Iris, Ronan said, his voice rough with barely controlled fury. She's in danger. Without waiting for questions or explanations, Ronan shifted into his wolf form and burst through the window of his office, leaving behind a shower of broken glass and confused pack members. The bond between him and Iris was like a compass needle, pointing him toward her location with an accuracy that would have been impossible in a normal mating. He ran through the forest with supernatural speed, his powerful legs eating up the distance as he followed the trail of Iris's scent and the golden thread of their connection. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of other pack members shifting and following, but he didn't slow down to wait for them. The rogues had taken Iris to an abandoned cabin deep in the woods, a place that stank of old violence and desperation. Ronan could hear her voice through the walls, steady and defiant despite her circumstances. My mate will tear you apart for this, she was saying. And when he's done with you, the rest of the pack will finish whatever's left. Your mate, the rogue leader sneered. You mean the alpha who marked you out of political necessity? Who keeps you around as a convenient placeholder while he mourns his real mate? Ronan felt his control snap at the insult. His wolf form was larger and more powerful than any ordinary werewolf, a manifestation of his alpha strength and his desperate need to protect his mate. He crashed through the cabin door with enough force to splinter the entire frame, his silver-grey fur bristling with lethal intent. The fight was brief and brutal. The rogues had expected to face an alpha weakened by grief and political pressure. Instead, they found themselves confronting a mate-bonded wolf whose protective instincts had been triggered to their fullest extent. Ronan's wolf tore through the first two rogues before they could even shift, his claws and teeth finding vital points with deadly precision. The remaining three managed to transform, but they were no match for an alpha whose mate was in danger. The golden thread connecting him to Iris blazed with such intensity that he could feel her exact location, her physical condition, even her emotional state as she watched him fight with a mixture of awe and terror. When the last rogue fell, Ronan shifted back to human form and rushed to where Iris was tied to a chair in the corner of the cabin. Her clothes were torn, and she had a cut on her cheek, but her eyes were bright with fierce pride as she looked at him. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his hands shaking slightly as he worked to untie the ropes binding her wrists. "I'm fine," Iris said, though her voice was hoarse from shouting defiance at her captors. "They wanted you to come after me. This was all a trap designed to prove that our bond wasn't real, that you wouldn't risk everything to save a fake mate." "Well, they got their proof," Ronan said grimly as the ropes fell away. "Jars, not the kind they were expecting." Iris rubbed her wrists where the ropes had chafed, studying his face in the dim light filtering through the cabin's broken windows. "Ronan, the way you found me, the way you fought for me, that wasn't the response of someone honoring a political arrangement." "No," he agreed quietly. "It wasn't." Cameron and a dozen other pack members arrived then, their wolves materializing from the forest like avenging spirits. They took in the senior Euros, the dead rogues, their alpha kneeling beside their Luna, the palpable intensity of emotion crackling between the mated pair. "Luna, are you injured?" Cameron asked, his beta instincts making him focus on practical concerns even as his eyes catalogued the carnage around them. "Nothing serious," Iris replied, accepting Ronan's hand as he helped her to her feet. "But we should get back to pack territory. If there were 5 rogues willing to attack me directly, there might be others planning similar moves." The journey back to the pack settlement passed in a blur of heightened security and whispered conversations. Word of the attack spread quickly, and by the time they reached the Alpha residence, pack members had gathered in the courtyard to see for themselves that their Luna was safe. Iris handled their concerns with grace and composure, assuring everyone that she was unharmed and that the threat had been eliminated. But Ronan could feel the exhaustion creeping through their bond, the delayed shock of what had happened beginning to take its toll. "Go rest," he told her quietly, as the crowd finally began to disperse. "We can discuss the security implications tomorrow." "We need to discuss more than just security," Iris replied, her green eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Don't we?" That night, Iris stood on the balcony of her suite, looking out over the pack territory that had become her home. The events of the day had stripped away the last of her ability to deny what was happening between her and Ronan. The way he had fought for her, the way their bond had guided him to her location, the sheer intensity of emotion she had felt from him during the Rescuer Euros, none of it could be explained by a simple political arrangement. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Ronan standing in the hallway, still wearing the clothes he had hastily pulled on after shifting back to human form. His dark hair was dishevelled, and there were still traces of dirt and blood on his hands from the fight. "May I come in?" he asked. "We need to talk." Iris stepped aside, gesturing him toward the sitting area near the fireplace. But instead of sitting, Ronan moved to stand near the window, his posture tense with barely suppressed emotion. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "When I asked you to let me mark you, I told you it was temporary, that it was just a political arrangement. I believed that was true at the time. And now I know I was lying to both of us." Ronan turned to face her, his grey eyes blazing with conviction. "What I felt today when those rogues took you, the way our bond guided me to you, the sheer terror of thinking I might lose your euros, that's not political convenience, Iris. That's love." The word hummed between them like a bridge neither had dared to cross before. Iris felt her heart race as she searched his face for any sign of doubt or confusion. "What about Celeste?" she asked quietly. "What about your grief, your commitment to her memory?" "Celeste will always be part of me," Ronan said honestly. "She was my first love, my first mate, and I'll never stop missing her. But she's gone, Iris, and somehow, despite everything that should make it impossible, I've been given a second chance at happiness." He moved closer, close enough that she could see the golden flecks in his grey eyes, smell the familiar scent but had become as necessary to her as breathing. "I know the timing is terrible. I know this isn't how either of us planned for this to happen. But I can't pretend anymore that what we have is temporary or fake or just a matter of convenience. You're my mate, Iris, my true mate. And if you'll have me, if you can forgive me for being too blind and stubborn to see it sooner, I want to make this real." Iris reached up to cup his face in her hands, feeling the slight roughness of stubble beneath her palms. Through their bond, she could feel the vulnerability beneath his confident words, the fear that she might reject him after everything they had been through. "I've been in love with you for years," she confessed. "Long before Celeste died, long before you ever noticed me as anything more than the pack healer. I told myself it was hopeless, that I was being foolish to dream of something that could never happen. And when I asked you to be my temporary Luna, I thought it would be enough. I thought I could be content with whatever piece of you I could have, even if it wasn't love." Iris smiled, tears threatening to spill over. "I was wrong. I want everything, Ronan. I want your heart, your soul, your future. I want to be your real mate in every sense of the word." Instead of answering with words, Ronan lowered his head and kissed her. It was nothing like the formal, ceremonial contact they had shared during their marking. This kiss was hungry and desperate, and full of months of suppressed longing. Iris melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, as she poured all of her hidden feelings into the connection between them. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. The golden thread of their bond was no longer something to be ignored or explained. A way a euros had blazed between them like a beacon, confirmation of what they had both been trying to deny. "So, what happens now?" Iris asked, her voice breathless. "Now we do this right," Ronan said, pressing his forehead against hers. "We court properly. We build a real relationship. We let the pack see that their Alpha and Luna are genuinely mated. And when you're ready, when we're both ready, we complete the mating bond the way it was meant to be." Completed. "I'm ready now," Iris said boldly, surprising herself with her certainty. "Are you sure? Because once we take that step, there's no going back. You'll be stuck with me forever, through pack politics and council investigations and whatever other chaos life throws at us." "I've been stuck with you forever since the day you marked me," Iris replied with a smile. "I just didn't want to admit it to myself." The next morning brought new challenges and new possibilities. Word of the rogue attack had spread beyond the Shadow Moon pack, reaching other territories and even the council itself. But rather than being seen as a sign of weakness, the incident had demonstrated the strength of the bond between Alpha and Luna, in a way that no amount of political maneuvering could have achieved. "The other Alphas are talking," Cameron reported during the morning briefing. "But not in the way we expected. Marcus Steele has been telling everyone who will listen about the way you fought to save Luna Iris yesterday. He's convinced that your bond is genuine, and that makes the Shadow Moon pack a more formidable ally than he initially believed." "What about the council?" Iris asked, settling into her chair beside Ronan's with a naturalness that would have been impossible just days before. "Elder Thorne sent a message congratulating us on repelling the rogue attack," Ronan replied, his hand finding hers on the armrest of her chair. "He also mentioned that the council considers the matter of our pack's stability to be permanently resolved." Sarah Moonwhisper entered the room then, her ancient eyes twinkling with something that looked suspiciously like smug satisfaction. "I trust everything is well with our Alpha and Luna this morning?" she asked innocently. "Very well," Iris replied, feeling heat rise in her cheeks at the knowing look Sarah gave them. "Excellent. In that case, I believe it's time to discuss the proper completion of your mating bond. The pack will expect a ceremony, and the spirits will need to be formally acknowledged." Ronan squeezed Iris's hand, and she felt his love and certainty flow through their connection like warm honey. "What did you have in mind?" he asked. "A full mating ceremony at the next full moon," Sarah replied promptly. "With the entire pack in attendance and representatives from our allied territories. It's time to show the werewolf world that the Shadow Moon pack's leadership is not only stable but stronger than ever." The weeks leading up to the full moon passed in a whirlwind of preparation and growing intimacy. Iris and Ronan spent their days working together to strengthen the pack's defenses and their nights learning to navigate the complexities of a real romantic relationship. The difference between their political arrangement and their genuine bond was like night and day euros where, once there had been careful distance, now there was easy affection and growing passion. They went on their first real date, 3 days after the rogue attack, a moonlit walk through the forest, but ended with them talking until dawn about their dreams for the pack's future. Ronan courted her with the patience and devotion of a man who knew he had nearly lost something precious, bringing her wildflowers from the meadows and surprising her with her favourite tea blends from distant territories. For her part, Iris began to truly embrace her role as Luna in ways that went beyond duty or obligation. She organised new training programs for the pack's younger members, established trade agreements with human settlements on their borders, and worked with Sarah to revive old traditions that had been forgotten in recent years. "You were born for this," Ronan told her one evening, as they watched a group of adolescent wolves practicing their combat forms under Cameron's supervision. "I can't imagine why I ever thought this arrangement was temporary." "Because you needed time to heal," Iris replied, leaning into his embrace as they stood on the training grounds observation deck. "And I needed time to find my courage. We both had growing to do before we could be ready for this." "Do you ever regret it? The way things happened, I mean. If we had met under different circumstances." "No regrets," Iris said firmly, turning in his arms to look directly into his eyes. "Every choice we made, every moment of confusion and pain and uncertainty, led us to this point. I wouldn't change any of it." The night before the full moon ceremony, Iris found herself unable to sleep. She stood on her balcony in a silk nightgown, looking up at the nearly complete moon that hung like a silver coin in the star-studded sky. Tomorrow night, that moon would be full, and she would officially become Ronan's true mate in the eyes of the spirits and the pack. The sound of footsteps made her turn, and she smiled as Ronan appeared in the doorway, wearing nothing but sleep pants, his chest bare in the warm night air. "Nervous?" he asked, moving to stand behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Excited," Iris corrected. "Ready?" "Maybe a little nervous about being the center of attention, but not about the ceremony itself." "Good, because I have something for you." Ronan pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a ring unlike anything Iris had ever seen. The band was crafted from silver and embedded with a stone that seemed to capture moonlight and hold it, glowing with an inner fire that matched the intensity of their bond. "It's a moonstone from the sacred caves where the first alphas were chosen," Ronan explained as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "Sarah helped me find it. She said it would help anchor our bond and protect you when I'm not nearby." "It's beautiful," Iris breathed, watching the stone pulse with soft light. "But you don't need to give me gifts to prove your feelings. I can feel everything you feel, remember? I know. But I wanted to give you something that would remind you every day that you're loved, that you're chosen, that you're exactly where you belong." Iris turned in his arms and kissed him deeply, pouring all of her love and gratitude and anticipation into the contact. Tomorrow would bring ceremony and celebration, but tonight was just for Thema Euro's two souls who had found each other despite impossible odds and overwhelming obstacles. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "My alpha, my mate, my home." "And I love you," Ronan replied, his voice rough with emotion. "My Luna, my heart, my second chance at everything." The full moon ceremony exceeded even Sarah's ambitious expectations. Representatives from 5 neighbouring packs attended, along with Elder Thorn himself and 2 other council members. The sacred grove where the ritual took place was lit by hundreds of candles and torches, creating an atmosphere of ancient magic and solemn beauty. Iris wore a gown of deep blue silk that had been specially crafted for the occasion, its flowing skirts embroidered with silver thread that caught the moonlight with every movement. The Luna's crown sat on her dark hair like it had been made for her. its sapphires and silver complementing the moonstone ring that marked her as Ronan's chosen mate. Ronan stood waiting for her at the center of the grove, magnificent in ceremonial robes that marked him unmistakably as an alpha in his prime. But it was the look in his eyes when he saw her that took Iris's breath, a wire Euro's pure love and admiration and wonder, as if he couldn't quite believe his good fortune. The ceremony itself was both similar to and completely different from their first marking. This time, when Sarah asked if they came to the ritual freely and with full knowledge of what they were undertaking, both Iris and Ronan answered with voices that rang with conviction. Do you, Ronan Ashcroft, Alpha of the Shadow Moon Pack, take Iris Blackwood as your true mate, to love and protect and cherish for all the days of your life? I do, Ronan said, his eyes never leaving Iris's face. Do you, Iris Blackwood, accept the bond of true mating with Alpha Ronan, to stand beside him as Luna and partner for all the days of your life? I do, Iris replied, her voice strong and clear. Then let the spirits witness what the heart has already claimed. Let the bond be sealed and the mating be complete. This time, when Ronan marked her, the sensation was entirely different from their first ceremony. The bite was gentle rather than clinical, filled with love rather than duty. And when the golden thread of their bond blazed to life between them, it was accompanied by a rush of images and emotions that belonged to both of Thema Euros, their future together, their children, yet to be born, their pack growing and thriving under their joint leadership. The assembled witnesses erupted into howls of celebration as the mating bond snapped fully into place, that Iris heard none of it. All of her attention was focused on Ronan, on the overwhelming sense of completeness that filled her as their souls truly merged for the first time. Now and always, Ronan whispered against her ear as he pulled back from the marking. Now and always. Iris agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss that tasted of moonlight and magic, and the beginning of everything. The celebration that followed lasted until dawn, with pack members and visiting dignitaries offering toasts and gifts to the newly completed mated pair. But as the first rays of sunlight began to filter through the trees, Iris and Ronan slipped away from the festivities to find a moment of quiet together. They walked to the hill overlooking the pack settlement, the same spot where Iris had stood, watching Celeste's funeral so many months ago. The view looked different. Noah, Euros are not, because the landscape had changed, but because Iris's perspective had shifted completely. This wasn't just a place she served anymore. It was home in the truest sense of the word. Any regrets? Ronan asked, echoing her question from their first real conversation. None, Iris replied without hesitation, though I do have one confession to make. Oh? I never really believed this was temporary. From the moment you asked me to let you mark me, some part of me knew it was forever. I was just too scared to hope for it. Ronan laughed, pulling her closer against his side. Then, we were both lying to ourselves. Because I think I fell in love with you the moment you agreed to help me, even though I was too stubborn and grief-stricken to recognize it. Good thing we figured it out eventually. Good thing we had help. Ronan agreed, glancing back toward the grove where Sarah was directing the cleanup efforts, with the efficiency of someone who had been organizing pack ceremonies for decades. As they stood together watching their pack begin another day, Iris felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. that the political pressures that had brought them together had long since faded into irrelevance. The Council's concerns about pack stability had been thoroughly addressed. Even the memory of their unconventional beginning had transformed from a source of insecurity into a testament to the mysterious ways fate could work. "What are you thinking about?" Ronan asked, sensing her contemplative mood through their bond. "Just all of it. How scared I was when you first asked me to be your Luna. How certain I was that I could never be enough for you or for this role. How wrong I was about almost everything." "You were never wrong about the important things," Ronan said seriously. "You knew the pack needed stability. You knew I needed time to heal. You knew that love couldn't be rushed or forced. You were just wrong about your own worth. And you were wrong about thinking what we had was temporary. Luckily, some mistakes turn out to be the best things that ever happened to us." 6 months later, Iris stood in the same grove where they had completed their mating bond. But this time, she wasn't alone. In her arms, she held a tiny bundle wrapped in soft yellow Blanketsa Euros, their daughter, born just 3 days earlier with Ronan's grey eyes and Iris's determined chin. "She's perfect," Ronan said softly, reaching out to stroke the baby's downy cheek with one gentle finger. "Just like her mother." "She's going to be spoiled rotten by the entire pack," Iris predicted with a smile. "Cameron has already carved her a toy wolf, and Sarah is convinced she's going to be the most powerful Luna in Shadow Moon pack history. She might be right. Look at her parents. They're Dortera Euros Luna, named for the role that had brought her parents Todgthera Euros yawned and stretched in her mother's arms." Completely unaware of the pack members who had gathered to welcome their newest addition. To her, the world was simply warm arms and loving voices and the unshakable security of being deeply wanted. "I never imagined this," Iris admitted, watching their pack family celebrate the arrival of their future alpha. "When I agreed to be your temporary Luna, I thought I was making a sacrifice for the good of the pack. I never dreamed I was actually finding my destiny." "Destiny has a funny way of disguising itself as duty sometimes," Ronan observed. "The spirits knew what we needed even when we didn't." "Speaking of the spirits," Iris said with a mischievous smile, "Sarah wants to know when we're going to start working on Luna's little brother or sister. Apparently, the pack needs backup heirs." Ronan laughed, the sound rich with joy and contentment. "Tell Sarah that we're in no hurry. We have plenty of time to build our family, and I want to enjoy every moment with both of my girls." As if summoned by their conversation, Sarah appeared at the edge of the grove, her ancient face creased with the satisfaction of someone whose carefully laid plans had come to fruition. "The spirits are pleased," she announced without preamble. "The bond between you grows stronger every day, and the pack thrives under your joint leadership. Even the council has stopped asking questions about your mating." "Were you ever worried?" Iris asked. "When Ronan first came to me with his proposal, did you think it would work out this way?" Sarah's eyes twinkled with secrets and wisdom accumulated over decades of serving as the pack's spiritual guide. "Child, I've been waiting for you two to figure out you belong together since you were teenagers. It just took a political crisis and some divine intervention to give you the push you needed." "You knew?" Ronan demanded. "All this time, you knew we were true mates." "The spirits don't give out that kind of information in advance," Sarah replied diplomatically. that they do provide guidance to those wise enough to listen. Why do you think I suggested Iris when you were desperate for a temporary Luna? Iris and Ronan exchanged glances, pieces of a puzzle finally clicking into place. Their meeting hadn't been coincidence or desperation. Euros, it had been orchestrated by forces greater than themselves, guided by a spiritual advisor who understood the workings of fate better than either of them had realized. Thank you, Iris said sincerely, for seeing what we couldn't see, for believing in us even when we didn't believe in ourselves. Don't thank me yet, Sarah replied with a grin. Wait until I start pressuring you about that second baby. The spirits have opinions about pack succession, you know. As Sarah walked away, presumably to share her wisdom with other unsuspecting pack members, Iris leaned into Ronan's embrace and looked out over the territory that had become so much more than she had ever dared to dream. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that reminded her of the thread of connection that bound her to her mate. No regrets? Ronan asked, the question that had become their private tradition. None. Iris replied, watching their daughter sleep peacefully in her arms while her mate's love surrounded them both like a warm blanket. Only gratitude for the most beautiful mistake of my life. Not a mistake, Ronan corrected gently. A miracle disguised as a political arrangement. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Iris Ashcroft, Luna of the Shadow Moon Pack, and true mate to Alpha Ronan, knew that he was absolutely right. Sometimes the best things in life came not from careful planning or desperate wishes, but from the courage to say yes when destiny came calling her Euros, even when it arrived, wearing the mask of duty and wrapped in the cloak of temporary convenience. Their love story had begun with grief and desperation, but it had bloomed into something beautiful and lasting and real. And in the end, that was all that Matarida Eurozenot how they had found each other. But the life they had built together and the future that stretched before them like an endless promise of happiness. The Shadow Moon Pack slept peacefully that night, secure in the knowledge that their Alpha and Luna were truly mated, deeply in love, and committed to leading them into a bright and prosperous future. And in the Alpha's residence on the hill, 3 hearts beat in perfect synchronization of Euros, a family born from duty, forged in love, and blessed by the eternal wisdom of the spirits who guide all werewolf destinies. The story that had begun with, I was his rebound, had become, I am his everything. And Iris wouldn't have changed a single moment of the journey that had brought them home to each other.